Sorry, that sounded really boring. Talofa lava. These microphones do not work. Can you try that again? Go. Well, you need to say it to the person next to you. Test 1, 2. Very, very good. Very good. Test 1, 2. Rightio, so I'm going to teach you something because we are waiting for the technology of Saipan to be fixed. So I need you to put your hands together and do this. Rub your hands together. In the European way, it means that we're hungry. Okay? I'm hungry for something. So tonight you are about to listen to something amazing. Alright, so I'm going to show you this. This is Billy. Rub your hands together. This is microphone with big nose. You know,
You're resetting the
okay?
sound.
Billy. When I say luapati, then my family over here will show you how to do that. Luapati family. Okay, luapati family. Alright, luapati everybody. Can you tell the person next to you, say, you are really good at clapping.
You're really good at that.
Interesting. What a useless microphone. Okay, anyway. So next clap, we're going to do this. There's luapati, go. Alright, don fa means 3, 3, 4. And you need to listen. Listen to my family. They're very educated. They'll show you how to do this. Don fa. And again. Nice. Old people over there are onto it. Fantastic. Okay, let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Now there is a distinct, significant sound. I'm very much talking behind me, annoying you right now. Right, there's a distinct, significant sound. You can hear the pati, which goes like this, go. And you can hear the ball, which goes like this. So, patia, ball. Patia, ball. Can you tell the person next to you, say, you pati and ball do the maths? I'm sorry you didn't do that. I didn't do that. Right, so let's try that again. Look, milli up here. Milli down here. Milli everywhere. Look, pati. Look, pati. Don't spark. Don't spark. Sir, you're not clapping. Oh, yeah, put the paper down. We are one. Let's try that again so he can learn how to do this. Billy. How's it going over there? Have we fixed it yet? Luapati. Don't spark. Do not look so serious. Some people like this. You look constipated, guys. That's not a good look. Okay, Billy up here. Billy down here. Billy everywhere. Luapati. Don't spark. Listen. Hey.
Oh.
Hey.
Oh.
All right. Hey.
Oh.
Hey.
Oh.
Pussycat. Big or pussycat? Pussycat? Okay, pussycat. Okay, tiger. Okay, that sounds like a really sick tiger. Oh, there's a scary tiger right there. Buffalo. Billy. One layer there, microphone. No, it's still dead. Luapati. Don't spark. Hey.
Oh.
Hey.
Oh.
Tiger. Cat. Buffalo. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson came from Papua, right? And so Michael Jackson goes, ow! Okay, so Michael Jackson, ow! Right now, that's not good enough. Let's be quiet than that. So Michael Jackson, ow! Can you
Samoan.
I am Samoan. Hey, hey.
Oh.
Hey, hey.
Oh.
Oh, well, I am sure that tonight you will have more than a meal. You will have more than a clap. You will learn something about our family. Yay, hallelujah, this sound. Okay.
Mic
So,
test?
are we on? Good? Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Turn to the person and say, hallelujah, the mics are on. So I'm going to give it over to you, MC. My name is Iiga. I am one of the descendants of Iiga Pisa. I'm just one of the Indians that runs around and does everything for my high chiefs over here. So I'm headed over to Francis. Here you go. Bye.
Sizus Maasi Langi. That's how we say thank you. Oh, let's give a big hand to Rio. Thank you, Uncle, for pointing him out. Turned out well. So Longy really warmed us up. I'm already sweating. Thank you, Longy, again. And so talofa lava. And welcome to our guests from Samoa, from America, and New Zealand. Special welcome to our high chiefs. And this evening we have 4. We've got Iiga, Olivia. Can you raise your hand? She's up here and there. With a beautiful hair. She is one of the granddaughters of Iiga Pisa, the youngest chief that was exiled to our neck of the woods, Saipan. And we also have Siali'i Malietoa, Samu Ripley. And he's a grandson of Iiga Pisa. We also have Tofa Suafole, and she is the granddaughter of Iiga Pisa. And then we also heard last night from Lea Siolongi, Dr. Mele Isea. I called him last night Dr. Malala, and it was a beautiful presentation. So these are our 4 high chiefs that we welcome to our beautiful island of Saipan. And we also welcome the great-grandchildren of Iiga Pisa. And those are, you've met Longi already, and Longi is back there. And also we have Fa'autu. And Fa'autu, where are you? She's there. She was one of the technicians up here. And Fuatau. Where's Fuatau? There's Fuatau there. And Peritania. Peritania's there. And I had Lonnie already, or Lonnie. So we're going to hear from 3 of our distinguished guests. First being Iiga Olivia. Don't you just love her name? Here we call her Olivia, but Olivia. So let's give a warm welcome to Iiga Olivia. Thank you for gracing us this beautiful evening. All right.
Let's say a little prayer before we start. Aftaile toi lo lofa malo ka tile. We ne yaso na o po e te ro tu na pa e ma to na find out. Aftai, ba ia fu lo lofa. I fo linga ma te mo fio ne o le o fio. Pa ani mai e ma te mo fio o le manui o tau singa ia ma to. Deni nei tu lana mātou te mapai ai. O a mātou fōfuanga uma nei a fiafi. Pa mole ngai whamanui mai. Pa atasi mai la o fio mai mātou. Mana tuai nei ta mamati nā mātutua o lo tango whai. O nā wai whaatasi mai mātou whanau. O leon mātou tā sanga nei tuklala. E wha māngalo I mātou lau whanau. I lo sofa Jesu Kiriso mātou li whaola. Amin. I will say a few words in Samoan first because I can see it's quite a few chiefs and artists of Samoa are present, as well as a lot of our friends and family that are here tonight. And a lot of our distinguished guests are also here to support and will give us the wisdom to encourage. You see, English is not our language, especially where I come from, the bigger island of Saipan. We don't speak English, but we're trying our best. So ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm talking too much. E mua ana o whaatulau le pa ia mauluma, o tupu mtamari e tai nane whalupolo tō whinga. Uma whai o nā whio mai, whaatasi mai I nei aso. O Samoa o uma o na tofi. Mo na upu tupu foi o uma o na ta oto. Mo la au leto e ho foi ia e wa o pa ia Samoa, mai le amatanga, e o lava I le ngataanga. Ai usi mai lau whawhonga, e se tau whai, a wasi na upu tala whengai I la lo o tau pa ia. Mala o tau mawhai o te tau tala I le ngana, e malam la mau mai o tātou o whia. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to stand here before you and address such an august assembly of the members of Congress and governing bodies of Saipan, as well as our beloved Samoan community. I would like to acknowledge the tireless work of the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, and in particular, Mr. Scott Russell and his team of dedicated workers. I am deeply humbled and honored to be given this opportunity to speak. I stand here as the eldest granddaughter of the late Iiga Pisa, to whom we are here today to honor and commemorate as being part of the first Mauapude. What I would like to impart and share with you, for those who are gathered here today, are my recollections of a great chief, great orator, and a leader of his family, who would in turn be part of a history-changing event that would later contribute to the birth of our beloved independent nation of Samoa. Iiga Pisa was born on the 26th of February 1882 in a village of Safune, Saipan, the bigger island of Samoa. His name was Tu'upisa Moa Moa, which means give Pisa for Samoa, referring to the district of Asariliana, Saipan, but people just called him Pisa. His father was a chief and later became the Reverend Minister Malaitai Lewotea Tuialini, and his mother was Lonise Batfusuanga Yakopo, also from the village of Sasa'ai, Saipan. He was married to the very beautiful, vibrant Pautunga Tangi of Samoa, daughter of the High Chief Te Whaiono Masunu of Waiala. They had 10 children, 6 daughters and 4 sons. They didn't manufacture the pill Byron. The daughters were the late Toka Imosina, Vaipouli, Melita Tapu, Piseta Suanau, and Iiga Suapoli, their twin girls. Vaifitu and their sons, Ene, Loto Tamaiti, Laubau, Manuki, and Savainaya Tom. Iiga Pisa was often lovingly referred to as Ina. He was a very tall and handsome man. These good looks have been passed down through all generations. He was a wise man who spoke when needed. Iiga would always be the peacemaker. Every day people would call into our house to visit and seek his advice, particularly around Samoan land dispute and title issues. Iiga was a man who cared and loved his family and extended family. He would often go to his village, Puapua, on the bigger islands of Bay, to attend meetings regarding the welfare of the village and district. He was also a man of the land, as are many of our people were and are today. Checking on his taro bananas plantation, from which he would sell locally and internationally. He worked in Saipan from 1909 to 1914. Then the American government in Guam and Honolulu from 1915 to 1919. When New Zealand government Samoa, he worked, when the New Zealand government were in Samoa, he worked for them from 1919 to 1947. And then he retired at 65 years old. He then bought 7 acres of freehold land and built his 2-story house, which is just opposite the Pier Park Stadium. He loved to read and write. He was self-taught, and he was a man of languages. During his exile, Iiga had the foresight to seek further education and learn German and English. These linguistic skills would prove to be extremely vital in future historical events. Education was the key for my grandfather. He would write daily, and his documents would litter his room. My vivid recollection is when he would tell me to make his bed and not touch anything, especially his papers. He would say to me not to sweep the room in case I might sweep away his paperwork. From this recollection of paperwork is the only written account of the Mawapule from a Samoan perspective, and one that will probably be used now as an official historical account. Iiga would say to me that the most important thing was family. He felt it was very important that I knew the genealogy of his family and grandma's family. This has instilled in me the importance of identity through knowing who and where I came from, and the practice and significance of Hanganu'u, our Samoan culture. Binding these beliefs together was his belief in God, which was birthed from his father, the Reverend Mesa Malaitai Lewatea Tuioalele. Iiga and Fautu were my grandparents, but they were so much more than this. They raised me as one of their daughters and loved me unconditionally. With all my flaws and imperfections, there is a saying that children will run in what their parents walked in. If I liken his saying to Iiga Pisa, then I can truly attest that many of his descendants have ran in their life callings and have taken up leadership roles in local and national government, education, the arts, and ministry. His daughter, Iiga Sofole, was the first woman member of parliament from the Whasareleanga district, from the village of Puapua. Following on his political sphere of influence is Iiga's grandson, Pesita Sam Lotu Iiga, who is the first Pacific Islander to hold 2 portfolios, the Minister of Pacific Island Affairs and Minister of Corrections in the New Zealand government. We can see Iiga's legacy living on in politics with 3 generations involved in both the Samoan and New Zealand governments. I believe that Iiga would have been proud of his grandchildren who have taken up the mantle of pursuing our canoe and looking after the family through maintaining chiefly titles. What then can I say to sum up my grandfather's life? There are not enough words, not enough time to truly summarize Iiga Pisa's life. Oleala Ilepule Oitautua, meaning the road to leadership is service. Iiga Pisa, true leadership because he knew who he was, a man who loved God, a man who loved his family, and a man who loved and served his beloved Samoan. So if you want my
Thank you very much. Iiga, Olivia. It was working when you were talking. Iiga, Olivia.
Did it die?
I think I'll change it to that other one. I think it's It's the other one. Got the backup mic. There it is. Let's hear it for our ranger who's trying to keep us going. Again, thank you, Iiga Olivia. And next, we'd like to hear from the grandson of Iiga Pisa, Siali'i Malietoa Samu Ripley.
First and foremost, I would like to say Patalofa and Afadai to all friends in the community of here in Saipan. I just wanted to touch briefly with a 5-year-old child growing up with Grandpa Iiga, and also in our resident in Iiga Pisa. Well, what do you remember when you're 5-year-old? What I know that the old man, we refer in Samoa, when you refer old, it's like a respect, and you give, we call it toina or lomatua. In the Western world, it's the opposite. It's like an insult. But in our paradise in Samoa, it is an honor to receive that golden reference, or so to speak. So, Grandpa Iiga to Pisa Moamo, we call him Ina. He is, as we grew up, 'cause lots of us grew up in this house, in our house in Samoa. In Samoa, the normal household that I grew up with is like 15. At the time of the dinner, it's about 30 people. So whatever we have when you're young, everybody gets their fair share. But anyway, when I was grew up in our house in Mayala, he speaks Samoan language. There is everyday language, like a street language, and there is a fa'aloalo that you do the prayer language. And Grandpa speaks in a T, the formal language. So growing up with them, he's very different. He's really into a lot of his paperwork, and he reads a lot. And as a matter of fact, Grandpa is a writer. He's a composer. And I just asked Sister Lau or Tofa what's that song about that he wrote, which is, it's about his, the volcano that was erected in 1914 in Savai. I don't know if Dr. Malama corrected me, but his village, Lalatele, where he was raised, they ran away from Savai, the big island, and seek for relocation in the main island of Upolu, which is about an hour sail from Savai to Upolu. But in those days, it's probably 10 hours by canoe or Na'alia where they travel. But in nowadays, it's just an hour in between island by boat. So furthermore, he was a wonderful, he's really into church, devoted Christian, and into his family in Savai, and also our grandmother's Ainga, or family, in the Waimaunga in Layala. So those are the things that I have see in him. He loves his nephews, who's about 30 of his nephews he's always close to. One of his nephews is late Honorable Tofilau Eti Alisana. He is the one that always around, and he was the late Prime Minister of Samoa. And what else do I remember about him? Very honest, very humble individual. He's into his family and to his, the last time I remember when his last time when all of us were around, it was during the conference in Malua, that when he passed away around May, it's like a main event in the whole Samoa when they have a conference for the church in Apia. So the whole congregation gathered. They make a special day just for that, for his funeral. So that's a big thing in a small island of Samoa. But furthermore, that's all I have to say, because the more you say it, I don't want to lie or anything in front of you. So they say, my grandma always say, make it sweet and short and to the point. I just wanted to, I don't know if Vau Purimatangi and Fionga Malama, remember, you can sing from your, this song, it is known with all, and Summa Faferina. Se ito malita so peste wa lelo se forma o le na peste. Oh my delight they to atane find my wali pupu my love. Yeah, Pastor, for enough of time on the one setting. Thank you very much.
That was simply beautiful. And every time they are done, something's wrong with the mic. I think Iiga Pisa is with us. So, without further ado, we will hear and see sights, we already heard sounds, from Pa'utu. Let's give her a warm welcome. Ranger, where is the other mic? Okay. Thank you. Mic test, mic test. Uno, dos, tres. All right. Iiga, Olivia, what's happening?
I'm praying. Half a day, Tiro Womi? Talafalava, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I stand before you as the daughter of Faitala Talapusi, the granddaughter of Tofa Imoasina, the great-granddaughter of Iiga Pisa. I stand before you as the sum of the lives before me, walking towards the future while looking to our past for wisdom and direction. I wish to continue from the rich sharing already given to you tonight by my aunt Iiga Olivia and uncle Sir Imaliatoa Samu, and give a reflection as one of the many great-grandchildren of Iiga Pisa. But before I begin, may I take this opportunity to add to the countless times we have expressed our gratitude, because one can never be thankful enough. Thank you, Scott, for your determination and perseverance. We are here today commemorating an important event in the histories of both Samoa and Saipan because of your tenacity to see this through. Whawhitai, Scott, and your staff, Whawhitai Te Lelapa. Thank you to the land and the people of Saipan for the warm hospitality, the friendly welcome, and deep fellowship shared over the last few days. Thank you for taking the time to partake in this event. We are here today to make meaning from the violence of exile, to make connections and understand the everlasting bond between the people of Samoa and Saipan. And I hope that the sharing of this one story within the larger national context of both islands will honor their memory and continue the healing from a remarkable but effectively painful chapter of our Pacific history. And I would like to, of course, acknowledge members of the family present. We are here representing Iiga's legacy to Samoa and the centenary since he made his epic voyage to Guam. If I understand, according to the Guam newsletter, yesterday marked 100 years since he arrived in Guam on his epic journey. And as great-grandchildren, I want to say that we are inspired and united to keep Iiga's legacy alive. And finally, we cannot move forward without acknowledging and recognizing the other stories from the exile. There were 72 Samoan exiles. I know in time all of their stories will be heard in detail, from the greatest of them all, the leader of the Mawapule, to the youngest child whose name we do not know yet, who was born here in Saipan. For all of them deserve a place in our history books and in the knowledge that their sacrifice culminated in the independence of Samoa 50 years later. But tonight I wish to share with you one story, the story of Iiga Pisa and the journey from Saipan to Guam.
The voices I hear, I hide my pride, I feel my fear. They know not that I've made my cunning escape. My secret, my bow has been lying in wait. I smiled, I nodded, and showed my face bright. They bought it, and while moon shone, I slipped away in the night. Ayano, into the unknown vast. From mighty beginnings, my fate had always been cast. Ayano, some laughed, but most followed, and wished to be me. Some cried, as the tide saw me off, saw me free. Samoa, my mantra throughout. O God, Tangaloa of the 9 heavens, be faithful and devout. Watch over me, please keep my task safe. On the hard, on the long, on the altered horizons I'll face. Ayano, alone on the sea, alone, distraught, but not for myself and not for my life. I cry in my heart for Samoa. The land of the brave, of beauty and rain, the islands of heaven, the islands where my people are proud, where they rule heart and soul. Samoa, Samoa, Samoa Pule will make you whole.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a short clip to give you an idea of what it could have been like to journey on a canoe from Saipan to Guam. And it was put together by one of the great-grandchildren of Iiga Pisa, Sanimui Almaseali'i. I'm not a historian by trade, nowhere near, nor have I mastered the tools of gathering historical data or doing historical research, but what I do have is passion for one that is so close to home. Many of our family grew up with the telling and retelling of the story, from the exciting escape from the clutches of the cruel Japanese to the paddling of 1,000 miles between Saipan and Guam. And this goes in line with what my uncle Seali'i Malietoa wisely said to me last night. He said, Samoans have oral traditions. For thousands of years they've had oral traditions. And the Pa'alangi, or the white man, only came with their papers recently. So be very careful. With that in mind, and after some searching and reading, the details of his journey came to light when we found handwritten accounts and translated manuscripts of the old man. This, coupled with the oral traditions and oral stories passed down from generation to generation to generation, provides us enough material to understand the details of his journey. We all know the story, we all know the gist of it. I think you've seen enough of it here in Saipan in the news. I know the Humanities Council have really made used the media to really put on, to let people know about this Samoan in exile. And on a surface level, it seems like a plot from a Robert Louis Stevenson novel, who, by the way, died in Samoa. The question, though, is what is it that led Iiga to make that decision on a warm June evening, much like tonight, to risk his life, to paddle a canoe, rather than following the status quo and return to Samoa on a ship that was provided by Britain with the rest of the exiled group? We heard last night from Dr. Melesea the context Iiga was born into. We heard about the power dynamics, and we heard about Lauaki and the creation of the Mawapule movement. That was the context. We heard Iiga's telling of his early childhood. And he wrote that he became a matai, or a chief, at 20 years old. And upon his passing in 1965, he had been a matai for 63 years. So as a young matai, he was moved by the cause of the Mawapule and wrote that Lawaki had a charisma and a presence about him that could rally 1,000 troops. Not surprisingly, he soon became Lawaki's right-hand man and messenger, moving around from different villages, different islands to rally support. And one of the incidents that culminated in the exiled group being moved to Saipan was he was caught by the Germans in Tutuila, or American Samoa today, and brought back and interrogated by then the Deputy Governor, Dr. Schultz. And he was alleged by the German administration to have tried to bring in guns for the Mawapule. And you will see this, that along with the events that were described by Dr. Malama last night, it culminated in the exile of Lawaki and his followers. And interestingly enough, in Dr. Solf's papers, Dr. Solf, as mentioned, was the governor at the time. It is said that they would go as exiles of chiefly status. Now, what does that mean? Only one can guess. So in April 1909, the exiled group left Apia, and they traveled in 2 different routes. The first group, they went through Fiji, PNG, and then Saipan. And then the other group, they traveled through the Marshall Islands, the Caroline Islands, and then Saipan. And according to his words, Saipan was a good place, and we can attest to that. I think we all really believe that as well. It had the same climate as Samoa, and then they quickly settled after building a Samoan village with 10 houses for the chiefs and 1 for the pastor from the London Missionary Society, tasked with accompanying the group spiritually. Everything was provided for them, it seems. They were given materials to build their houses, water piped down from a nearby stream, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told that there's a bridge near the site called the Samoan Bridge. Yes?
Yes.
I'm hearing yes? Okay. And maybe perhaps the water came from that river for the village. And he says that clothing and food was also provided, and all of the costs were charged to Dr. Solf in Samoa. So I'm guessing this is what Dr. Solf meant by exiled in chiefly status. And this also answers a question that came last night. I think it was Maria who asked the question, were they prisoners? Were they jailed? Obviously not, but I think we can all agree that they were still prisoners. So once settled, his everyday routine involved going to school to learn German, and I heard that, we read that he walked 5 miles, which is about 2.5 kilometers for us on the metric unit, every day to go and learn German, because he had decided in order for him to make it, he needed to learn German. And he started from infant school, which is, I think, year 1, and took about 4 years to learn German. And by the end of his studies, he was the interpreter for the Samoan exiled group with the German administration. So imagine his, I don't know, it would be disappointment when the Japanese take over in 1914 rather. He's learned all this German only to find that the Japanese are here, and the German language is not going to be of much use with the Japanese around. And he says in his diary that he went to a couple of Japanese classes, and I guess it was too hard. Oh, well, I don't know if it's too hard, but he came back and said, "Oh no, this is not for me." And this is how he came about to deciding on this journey that he made from Saipan to Guam. Because Guam at the time was controlled by the Americans. And what did the Americans speak? English. He also mentioned frequent interactions with the Chamorro people and said that he always sought out the oldest of the people on any land or island he was, whether it be Saipan or Guam, to hear their stories, to hear their myths, to hear their legends, and understand their tupuanga, he wrote. Tupuanga in Samoan means genealogical roots from which a person hails from. So he wanted to understand the people and the land he was in and their tupuanga. From the stories of my father and his cousins, my uncles and aunties, he was very well versed in Samoan genealogy, but that's another story because Samoan genealogy will go back 30, 40, 50 generations, and you don't want to hear that. So back to his journey. We all heard from this morning and from his accounts that the main reason why he left for Guam was to learn English. He was so ambitious to learn a European language because, and this is my personal opinion from reading his accounts, he had different accounts in Samoan and translated in English. He had a fear of being exiled again. He wanted to learn a language that will help him be part of the system and therefore not be banished because he didn't speak the language. And yes, everything was provided in Saipan. Yes, they were comfortable. Yes, they got along with the Chamorro. Yes, they were free to roam around, but he was nearly 4,000 miles away from his islands. He was forcibly removed from his land. He was taken away from his family and his village. Imagine if you were forcibly removed from Saipan and moved to Samoa. You'll have fun anyway. And so it is obvious that he did not want that to happen. So he learned German. Obviously that didn't work out. Japanese was a no-no. And so on the first Wednesday on June 1915, he borrowed a canoe and began his journey. He went from Tanapang in the canoe and he paddled it all the way down to Agigan, is that correct? And from there he set sail towards Guam. People think that he did the 120 miles straight through. Like he went from Saipan here all the way to Guam. Man, he'd be Superman if he did that. But actually, he traveled and stopped on different islands on the way to Guam. His first stop was obviously Tinian, but very briefly. And some islands just off Tinian, small uninhabited islands, is that correct? Yeah. And he was there long enough to just get a coconut, fill up with water. He had a bed sheet as a sail. He had a water bottle that had his certificate of German studies, and that was the only identification he had on him. And he had several mementos from his time in Saipan. He traveled 3 days from basically Saipan Tinian and 3 nights, and he paddled through and used the constellation of the Southern Cross as his compass. You're all familiar with the Southern Cross? For our family, or at least for me, when my father told me that that was the constellation Grandpa Ina used, every time I see it, I feel calm and I feel at peace because I know it guided him. And as he sighted land during those 3 days and 3 nights, he thought it was Guam. But then he felt his energy going and eventually lost his paddle as he fell asleep. But lucky enough, he got there and was found by a Chamorro on island, and it so happened to be Rota. So yeah, not Guam, Rota. Thankfully, the chief of Rota, and this is one part of the journey that we still need to find research on, and so if anyone can help us with this, we would be grateful. But apparently the chief of Rota and his people in the village welcomed him and took him in with open arms, took his boat, and made him part of the family. He stayed there for 11 days, and he used that time to fix a new paddle. He discussed things with the Rota people, and then he wrote a letter, according to his writings. He wrote a letter to take back to the Samoans in Guam, or in Saipan rather, I mix them up all the time, that was taken by the Carolinians that were going from Rota to Saipan. When the Samoan chiefs who were, so Lawaki and about 4 chiefs were still alive, received the letter, they requested the Japanese to look for him. They wanted their son back. They wanted to go home with him. He didn't want to go. He still had a lot of adventure to do. So he asked the chief to not tell the Japanese that he was on island. And so the chief ordered everyone on island to lie about his whereabouts, to say that he had left. And they hid his canoe because apparently the Samoan canoe is very different from the Carolinian or Northern Marianas canoe. And the Japanese still searched all the village and didn't find him. 11 days later, he decided to pursue his goal to reach Guam. And the chief tried to dissuade him, but he said, hey, I made it from Saipan to Rota, that's 70 miles. Rota to Guam is only 50 miles, easy peasy. And just on a side note, which I found very interesting, is he said that he saw the growing of rice on Rota and found it very interesting and different on how they prepared it. Just a side note. And so he started off again at 7 p.m. at night, and only the chief of the village knew that he had gone. The chief had prepared him food, and they had exchanged blessings. And then he started again and made his way slowly but surely to Guam. It took him about 2 days, 2 nights to paddle from Rota to Guam, where he landed on Retidian Point, yes? But when he arrived, from the sounds of it, he was like, okay, I'm here, but how do I get myself, introduce myself? People might imprison me, might think I'm a German spy, might think I'm just some random guy, you know, in a canoe. But this is 1914, so I can just imagine. And so if you just sit there and think, we hear the story, but do you actually know what the emotions and the feeling of the person is? I can just imagine how anxious he was. He's the Samoan in a lava with a weird-looking canoe. I only speak some Chamorro, German, and Samoan. That's not going to be of much help in Guam that speaks English. So if you just take a moment and just see how that would have felt if it were you. It's very interesting. And the other question that came to him was, why would anyone trust me? Why would anyone trust me, especially during a time of war? So he slept, because that's what you would do when you have all those feelings and emotions. And a person that he said seemed to be happy on toddy, or is that a kind of drink here? Or what seemed to be a drunk, woke him up and gave him food. And he asked the islander to please take him to the governor or the chief of the island. And so from there, they got on the canoe, this famous canoe, and they went from Retidian Point to Agana, yeah. And when he was finally seen by the governor didn't believe him. He said, you can't be from Samoa. I just came back from Samoa. It's about 3,500 miles away. But what convinced the governor was seeing him in his lava, and that he was so different from the islanders of Guam, and just from his stature. So they brought in a Chamorro interpreter by the name of Jose Roberto, but it soon became clear to them that his German was better. And so they brought in a bandmaster who was German, who became the interpreter, and he told his story to the governor, who obviously found it in his heart to take this person in and say, okay, I believe your story, I take it in, come and work and learn English as you wished, under the US Navy at the time. He was taken in and told to get rid of his lava and to buy clothes, pants, t-shirt, undershirt, and a buttoned up shirt, and it would all be paid for by the governor, because he didn't want him to look like a savage. And so, from the 18th of June 1915 until February 7th, 1919, he spent 4 years in Guam, working in the printing press, learning English and learning how to typeset. Forgive me, I don't know what that means, but I'm just assuming it's to do with printing of newsletters and newspapers. I see people nodding. Okay, that works. But then in late 1918, he heard the sad news that Samoa had been hit by the Spanish influenza. I'm not familiar with Saipanese history, if that was the case here as well. Yes or no? The Spanish influenza wiped out 25% of our population in Samoa, and this included the 4 remaining chiefs that arrived in Samoa from the exile group. Upon hearing that, he approached the governor at the time, and in these 4 years, may I just mention that he went through 3 governors, and he requested for a passage to go home. The governor granted his request and told him, you can go for free on a US Navy ship that will be going from Guam to Honolulu. But once he got to Honolulu, you'd think that he'd want to go straight to Samoa, but no, he ended up spending 7 months working for another printing press, which is, I find, quite interesting. And for our family, we actually don't know what really happened in those 4 years and 7 months. And we've always wondered in the family, hey, maybe we have cousins in Guam. Because, and I quote, I kid you not, I quote from the Guam newsletter, Iiga Pisa was a tall, muscular, handsome, blonde Samoan chieftain. Yeah, and like Auntie said, that's where we get it from. When he got to Honolulu, his family in Samoa got a hold of the news that he was in Honolulu and alive and well. And so his brother, or the family, approached the New Zealand government to seek for his return back to Samoa from Honolulu, and paid for his fare. When he found out, he got on the USS Sonoma via American Samoa and arrived in Matautu Wharf in Samoa in September 1919. When he stepped off that ship, all the Samoans thought, hey, look, it's another European islander, because he was wearing his fancy pants and no lava and his buttoned up shirt and blonde hair. And this is a memory that was told to me by my grandmother. He walked to his half-sister, Wapuni Matani, in a pier. Just checking with the oldies. He walked to our pier and just showed up at the house, and they nearly had a heart attack because they thought they saw a ghost. And so from there, the family had a huge celebratory feast in the Alva'a, and welcomed him back in Savai. And so from there, my question is, what happened after he returned to Samoa? We all heard the stories that were told to us by the grandchildren. He was offered a position in the Department of Native Affairs in New Zealand, and therefore he achieved his dream of learning English so that he is not exiled anymore. He worked in the Board of Agriculture and was part of the committee that produced our country's constitution. And so for 45 years, he was heavily involved in government, and the people flocked to him for advice and help. He was also present during the tumultuous time of the New Zealand government and witnessed firsthand the second Mau movement against the New Zealand administration. And here I'd like to take a moment to share with you a snippet of a short video that I took of my great-grandmother, Tofa Imuasina, speaking about her personal experience and memory of the old man. I think it's important because it acknowledges the 3 generations after him: his daughter, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren.
Just put CSS.
Unfortunately, this is not subtitled, but I will try and give you an idea of what she's saying. This is the eldest daughter of Iiga Pisa, speaking about the fatal shooting of the Mau movement leader. And she's talking about her experience as an 8-year-old and the eldest of 6 girls, and how she witnessed her dad being summoned by the New Zealand government to come and mediate between the Mau movement, the second Mau movement, and the government. It's a bit ironic, but also comes full circle, because as a member and one of the leaders, or the right-hand man of the leader of the Mauapule, it shows that he has evolved in his ways of approaching issues. And here she is speaking about how she saw her father, who was at the time being massaged by the women in the family. That sounds wrong, but he was sick, so he was getting massaged. And she was saying that a New Zealand captain came in and wanted Iiga to come, even though it was not his job description, to come and find the Mau movement people and try and abate them and calm them down to avoid more bloodshed. And so with this, I think it is fitting to really show this clip, to show a man who believed in his family and his country and used his skills to help move that forward. And as you can see, his journey and his adventure brought him full circle back to Samoa, where he observed the changing dynamics of the country and its struggle for self-determination. And it continued to play a part in the struggle for independence, as witnessed here. And finally, he was able to see the fruits of his work come to life with the raising of our flag on January 1st, 1962. He was the only member, as far as we know, of the 72 exiled group to have seen the independence of Samoa. Eventually, he passed in 1965, and today we stand here, remembering his life as a family, as historians, as interested parties in Saipan and from other places. remembering one of the many stories weaved together to make the Pacific mat of history. And as we do, I would like to leave you with 3 questions for your own reflection after she speaks. And this was 2 years ago when she was 92 years old. So she has been blessed with a long life. The 3 questions that I'd like to ask of you, and you can maybe answer them during the question and answer section, is what is it that we can take from Iiga's journey in life? How does this narrative influence our family and nation's current situations, and is it still relevant as a narrative for us today? Thank you very much.
Fa'afatai, fa'autu. Very moving stories that we heard from our 3 speakers, Iiga, Olivia, Siali, Malietoa, Samu, Ripley, and now Fa'autu. I'm filled with a lot of emotions, but what I do take away from the 3 speakers is that there is a God, and He has guided him to take another route, or else he would have been among the 72 that would have gone, and the history that is foretold would not have existed if he had gone with the others. So there's a rhyme and a reason why he was so determined to be different and to take a different path. So can we take a moment of silence to reflect on the stories that were told and to think of the late Iiga Pisa and his courageous life and journey. Thank you. So now we begin the Q&As as Pa'autu had mentioned. And do we have the first questionnaire? Any takers? I know last night we had a slow start and then all of a sudden we were bombarded with all these questions. So we got 1, all right. And go ahead and address it to any of the 3 speakers or the chanters. Your name.
My name is Horiguchi. I'm originally from Japan, and I've stayed here for well over 40 years. And because thanks to Mr. Scott Russell, I've been working on the Japanese side records. And unfortunately, nowadays on the internet, Japanese military records from that time frame, they are available. Not all of them, but the military logbooks written by those people who came to invade at the beginning of the World War I, taking over all the micronation, the German possessions. So like I said, thanks to Mr. Russell, I'm a bit familiar with this story. But I'm more curious because I missed it when Chief Iiga Pisa went to Guam. What was the story he gave to the Guam governor? Did he say something like he came from Samoa Or did he say he came from Saipan?
Yeah, thank you for the question. He told them the whole story, the full story. He told them what had happened to the exiled group of Samoans. He told them about German Samoa being taken by the Japanese, and he told them that the Japanese and Britain were negotiating a ship to take back the exiled group to Samoa from Saipan. And then eventually he told them, I did not want to go back, I wanted to learn English. So he was very honest with them, at least according to his accounts.
Yeah, okay. I understand that there was some diplomatic communication with the British and the Japanese. And the Japanese, I think by the time Chief Pisa took off, it was already known that the Japanese battleship was going to take the group to Yalut. Yalut was the name given to the marshals around that time. And the arrangement was that in Yalut, British boat should be coming in. So I trace that was true. And but then the logbook by the military people in Yalut about that time frame, it's not been publicized yet. And I'm actually the past 1 week, every day I was checking, trying to see if I get it, but I couldn't get it. But afterwards, from Yalut, it was easier, because New Zealand, Australian newspapers, they are showing the routing from there. So that is a part that is not very easier. But I felt that I was kind of responsible for the Japanese part. And still some are missing. And especially around that time, I could see that the Japanese military so sensitive about the American presence in Guam, and vice versa. And one story I found today was that the Americans, listening to the appeals made by Rotanis, they moved the American Red Cross to bring some food to the people on Rota, which they did. And obviously the Japanese got so concerned, right? It's my jurisdiction. It's my island now. Why did the Americans do those things? So there are some documents there today I found, and I was reading, and then I thought it was funny because I found a passage saying that the people from Rota who went to Guam to appeal to the Americans, they may be mistaken about this Samoan guy. Somehow, Chief Pisa is there, but the Japanese didn't get the true story. But they kind of made our way, and then they connected to it, and then the Japanese understanding at that time, as they were told, was that the Samoan guy went there because of the bad wind. So it was kind of interesting, right? So, and then I think the reason why, if you look at the reason why the Japanese got that kind of a false information, which clearly shows that the Rotanis were really cooperating with Chief Pisa, hiding the story. And at the same time, because of the American Red Cross issue, that was more of a bigger issue for the Japanese. A lot of things are going on back and forth. And that is why I was curious, what kind of story Chief Pisa gave to the Romanian governor. So it's now clear that the Americans just did it in their own way. Because essentially, if it's leaked out, it's going to be a big, international issue. Personally, I'm glad that everybody on the way cooperated, and even the American governor, they cooperated, so that finally Chief Pisa was made available in his homeland.
Fortune.
Yeah, so I'm kind of even now I'm kind of puzzled. The naval governor thought that maybe we can just put in that trip.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Very interesting. We're trying to piece the puzzle together, right? The picture is becoming more and more defined and refined. Any other questions? I saw several hands go up, but I didn't take a photo as to who was the other one. Any takers? I guess we've got one.
I think, do I need a mic?
Maybe not.
No need, right?
No.
Okay. Since, I'm really curious right now because the legacy of the Iiga Pisa in the Marianas.
Your name? What's your name?
Sorry. My name is Matt Max Asa. Masina Leuta. I'm from Samoa, but exile in Saipan.
Exiled too?
Anyways, my question is, does the family has any future plans to do a research in finding out if they have other granddaughters and grandkids and other daughters and other sons somewhere around during this voyage of their great dad here in
You must have been here last night.
Yes.
Because that question was raised. Yes. Iiga Olivia.
You wanted to know whether the old man got a few little ones over there?
Yes.
Now listen, darling, in those days they were taking the pills. So I couldn't tell you that, but if there was any little ones, we would have known. Being a Samoan, if they have a child out of marriage, they will always look after them, and that child will always find the father or the mother. But we haven't heard anything about any children on his travels. There are two, and this is in Samoa, two boys. One is a reverend, one is a brother. How do you address him in the Catholic Church? He's a minister. In the Catholic? A priest, yeah, a priest. In Samoa it's called, one is from a village of the Sai. He's an orator. That's one of his sons. And the other one, he's a priest from the Catholic Church. And those are the only ones that I know about Grandpa's travels and that. But over in Guam and Japan, in Saipan, if there were any of his children there, I'm sure they will find their way to look for the family of their father. And if there is one there, I'm really, really interested and happy to meet them. Thank you.
Thank you, Iiga Olivia, for that response. But just joking, maybe he was practicing on me. Any other comments or questions? Yes, we have a lot of practitioners here, right? None? We got one.
Brother, comment. Hi, my name is Juan Aloysius Pasi Camacho. I think you should stand up, brother. But this is more of a comment. I thank all of you guys for coming down here, and what I'm about to say is that I feel that the local educators here should rather update the cinema history book. And forgive me if this was brought up last night, but we should really make sure that that movement, that that era in our history is a very important part of our history here, as well as in Samoa. And I hope and pray that our next generation, our kids in school will also read about what had happened, with Chief. So I'm not too sure who's going to be in charge of that, but I just feel that there should be a lot of updating in our local cinema history books. So, if anybody could help me on that.
Thank you. That is a very good recommendation. And one of the board of directors for the Northern Marianas Humanities Council is Don Farrell, who wrote the NMI history book with the help of, last night I saw Mr. Wanningberg, who was his illustrator and assistant. So I'm pretty sure now that it's being videotaped, he will hear of it and an amendment will be made. See, this is the beauty of history, right? It's not carved in stone. We can amend it, and we have some classroom teachers in here who teach Northern Marianas history. And I'm pretty sure, and one of them is a board of director also, and that's, Masiwamai, no, not Masiwamai, Danita Young Tamai. So she was here last night. So, some of our history teachers are here. And so I'm pretty sure that recommendation will be point well taken, and as Iiga, Olivia, and Dr. Malama were discussing, those were some of their recommendations too. So the light has shone on this chapter, and so it will be incorporated. So any other comments? I saw some hands. Liana.
Good evening, thank you, and Hopade, welcome. No, buenas dan no sezus masi, neman maktan zo magi kita no mami. Go Siliana, Sablanhouse Schneider. My roots are actually from Rhoda also, so I'm very interested in finding out about Luta. We call it Luta. Both my parents are both from Rhoda. Part of their family are both from Rhoda, and they're also of a clanship called Matantoto. And I'm very interested to find out who are the, in your books. But fundamentally also, I'm going to echo Mr. Camacho's, and I'm kind of not nervous. I'm never nervous about speaking, but I have this rush, because when you talked about the history books, don't kuluna sezus masi, because this past 6 months has been a journey, and I'm sorry to be very emotional. I was doing a research in Garapan about a place called Anagwan. Nobody knows a place called Anagwan, and I'm very, very interested about your great-grandpa's writing. So I can also, I'm neither an historian, but I'm sure I can extract some information from there. I had just found out that there's this great Chamorro family of warriors and chiefs that were in a place called Anagwan in Garapan. Now it's a central business, but today if you pass by, on your way out, please, it's a wall of metal fenced out, where 263 of my ancestors have been unearthed. Last in 2004 it was documented. It's a great site. And now recently, more of that have been desecrated in a way to build the casino, the first casino here on our island. And it was really sad because I've been spending, since May 13, I was only able to access through Open Government Act some of the documents. And as I was reading, I was, in tears because these are the problem with the history books. Thank you. It should be in the history books ever since. Since the 80s, there's a new history book that was written recently, but it's never there. And with all due respect, Mr. Russell, I've also seen your name in there, and I appreciate having it updated. Thank you.
Thank you, Lino had a comment or a question, and then Mrs. Coleman, and then Ms. White, and then we've got others.
So, Francis, I don't know where will these take us. We're talking about children and families and children here on Saipan, Tenian, Rora, and Guam. And we talk about our ancestral bones and the development on the island. I strongly suggest that the native Samoan and Carolinians should get together and protect those bones. Our leadership knew that. Our developers knew that. Still, we let it happen. We need to come together. Mentioning about changing the history, be very careful because there's a written history and there's oral history. Oral history, which was never included in our Western educational system. It was totally put off on the side because it was not interesting, or it was not essential. I have no idea. But we all know that the so-called education at this point, and I'm one of the recipients, it's just a one-sided education. It's a written form. Nothing wrong with that. We need to have that. But we lack the oral history, and we are hearing that, not only from our visiting Samoans, family and friends, but a lot of many examples in Hawaii, what they did to them, Alaskans, native here, native there. We know that, and what's happening? I am born and raised here, and my name is Urushameangi, Carolinian, and my legal and Catholic name is Lino Olopai. I'm born and raised here, but my family are from the Central Caroline Islands, and we share the same thing. Yesterday we talked about food. We do have a lot of ceremonial food that we use for special occasion. We have food strictly for the chiefs. They don't put a heck on you if you do something against that. Our religious belief, it's similar to almost any church, except that it's not held in the church. It's the whole island that it's part of that. So how come, my question is, how come these things are not included as part of our curriculum? So our children have much better view, whether it's written history that we're suggesting or oral history. Our knowledge in healings, chanting, music, dancing, artworks. Francis, you know that. What's happening? Our ancestral bone. It's been bulldozed and backhoed, and I have no idea. But we are very rich, and we share the same concern throughout the Pacific. Paddling a canoe from here to Guam, I won't be surprised if we have family in Tanapak. I'm related to them, and I'm sure we take good care of our families. I won't be surprised if we have children on Tenian, Rora, and Guam. In my, I don't know how to say it. Our navigators are very, the ladies like our navigators. And almost all the islands that the navigators came to, they have children. And how we're related to that? In Carolinian, we don't have cousin, first, second, or third cousin. When we are part of that bloodline from our mother, then we are brothers and sisters. As a matter of fact, we don't have words in our language that we say first, second, or third cousin. We address everybody as a brother. We say we, all of that. I can talk, but anyway, welcome to the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Nino. You can tell that he's one of the orators. Ms. Coleman.
Hello, thank you. Alava Hapade Turami. And for the record tonight, I know last night you heard me say Coleman, but because my husband is here, I will be Marito Lu. But I did mention to him, I said, I made sure to tell them that, you're from the police. And actually, correction, I'm born in Samoa, and I grew up in Upolu, born and raised. But, thank you again. I mean, the story is it's so meaningful, but only because we all know we live in less than a perfect world. But what really I heard was just, the kind of relationships that were so important to Pacific Islanders. Everywhere he went, and the connections that we have, and just, I kept thinking, I said, what a difference it would have made if he showed up on the show and said, excuse me, do you have your visa? and again, we hear too about all these different, but it's really good to hear about how strong the relationships were even back then and the alliances. And even amongst Pacific Islanders when they were first going on their journey, but also more so between Pango and Upolu. Even for myself, with my own family, there's a part of the story that a lot of people don't know. They always hear about all the history and all the work some of the family has been involved in, but really even with my grandfather when he got done with school. And I didn't know this, that when the first work he did was actually in Upolu. It was in Apia. And so I asked my father, I said, why? We hear all these stuff. I said, why did he go there? And he said, no, because, we're also from there. And he felt that was the best way that he could be of service in starting out. So that's another thing that really took away, that really kind of hit home, is that so many of the things that they did weren't for their own glory. It was really because of their love and their service. And in doing that, he was able to do so many fantastic, wonderful things that really made a difference. And just to see that his relatives now have carried on that legacy, it's just really, really a very, very inspirational story. And we thank you again, for really, your time and for keeping and preserving all of that and coming and sharing that with us and helping us to also, get back in touch with some of those values. And also understanding, where we came from and the kind of struggles that our own ancestors had to go through to bring us today, and what we can do to try to, make also a positive difference in moving forward. Thank you.
Rose, go ahead.
Good evening, Tiro. Forgive me. Well, culturally, it's kind of hard for me sometimes to stand straight when relatives are sitting down. So it's just part. Forgive me, my brother. Just wanted to share, when I was young, I come from a family that lived in the north. And I grew up hearing a song that my grandfather, he would have been in his mid-20s, my grandfather, in those years that the Samoans came. And so I heard the song, but I didn't know it. I found out when I was in Samoa, Fafatai. That rang a bell because I grew up hearing that word from my grandfather. But I have no clue what was that, because he was singing a song and his wife's name was Maria. So he was probably singing to her or making fun of her or something like that. And the song went, Maria, maupule, Maria fafatai, Maria talofa, talofa mai. I heard that, so I asked my mom, what kind of song is that? What is that? And my mom would tell me, oh, there were some Samoans that lived in the north. So my grandfather, coming from the first child of the Camacho clan, he lived in the north, which is probably about 20 minutes by walk from San Roque to Tanapak. Very close. And so we have relatives in Tanaka also. And that's where the word Whawhatai I heard, but I don't know what it was until I went to Samoa, and then I learned, oh, Whawhatai, that's a very important word. So I learned that word, and then I didn't know. So I thought my grandpa was probably just making fun of his wife. That I didn't know that. Now that when you mention that Mau Pule, what it is, it brought the song, you know, she probably had picked it up too, you know. Who knows, was probably mingling with the Samoans of one island. And that was the song. Maria Mau Pule, Maria Whawhatai, Maria Talofa, Talofa Mai. So, thank you.
Beautiful. So, like I said, this is like a puzzle. Memories are coming back, and stories and songs of yesteryears are coming back and are still very fresh in our minds. Do we have anyone from the High Chiefs that would like to comment on what Rose sang and shared? Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite get the whole story about your grandfather's song, but it sounds like Manuia Whawhatai. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Which it's translated as I'm very well, thank you, and I'm fine, thank you. But it must be. I think it's a song. It's either a hymn or a song that was written and composed by your grandfather. So he would only know. Because you mentioned Manuia Whawhatai, it's always, that is what we always say thank you. You would say thank you to you and whatever is given to you. And if you pray, you always thank the Lord, what He has given to you and the life that you led and being. But it is very important that you would know the background and the history, the genealogy of what they could be, you know. Because we were talking with Professor Malaysia that with this group of maybe 10 of them, you know, the Mawapule, we might gather all the families, the children of these chiefs that were taken away, because we hear about this. I heard about it when my grandfather was alive. He writes a lot, but not in Samoa. Nobody talks about it. They know about it, but these people, these chiefs that were in exile, but nobody bothers about talking about it. It's only the scholars that they would speak about it and not taught in class. I'm not sure whether Professor Malaysia knows about that, but he is interested in getting the families, the children of these chiefs together, so that we can form something and so that the generation would know about what their grandfathers been up to. Well, in a good way.
My only comment is to granddaughter of Iiga Pisa. Much has been discussed, or much has been raised by the curiosity of people, whether those who came, had locals and had families, in particular our grandfather. And one of the things that in my recollection of my time, and in the knowledge that we gained, is that there's the privacy, then there's the secrecy, and of course the sacredness of relationship. And the only comment that I can make now is the secrecy the sacredness of those relationships wherever it happened in their time away from Samoa must remain that way until the next chapter is written. So whaafatai.
Whaafatai tofa, whaafatai ina, Olivia. Well said. Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Camacho.
I just would like to share my own experience when I first, came to Saipan. This was like 1979. And so my husband's family were having a Christmas getting together. It was my first time. And so when we had this gathering, there was this old man by the name of Manuel Blanco. He's actually my mother-in-law's brother. So they were talking, he was the oldest among the siblings. And so he was talking with the elders, and then all of a sudden, he started to look at me and he sang a song to me. And then this song, the name of the song is Goodbye My Feleni. It says Goodbye My Friends in English. And so I was shocked because, I don't speak Chamorro. I don't have families here. It was only him that brought me here. And then this old man was just singing. So I was amazed, and I was just sitting and looking at him. And of course, I'm kind of a little bit thinking about home, yeah? And so he started telling me two names. He only said that there's some Samoans that he's been following, and that Lawaki was one, and Iiga Pisa. And they were always, in the ocean. And because he was a little boy, young boy, so he likes to hear them telling stories, but that's always the song that they've been singing. So I think he started learning the song as well, because he made it like one verse, but then again, they were all Samoan words he's singing. So I was looking at him, my husband, and I said, man, I feel like I'm back home, this old man singing to me, But then again, I didn't really know, what was really happening then at that time, or, what is he really trying to tell me? So now I really get to see the whole picture of who everyone was and everybody. But again, I thank you to the Pisa family for, coming to Saipan to share all these. It's very emotional. And again, Don Guru Nasitus Maasit and Pakutai
So all these beautiful stories are now, we're connecting the dots, right? What one elder or Gwela and Gwelu said is isolated, but then when we hear other stories, we start putting them together. And that's the beauty of this beautiful gathering and the beauty of the office called Northern Marianas Humanities Council, because they're the ones who bring these beautiful stories and pieces of history come alive, right? And so, like Mrs. Camacho said, we're not just here learning about all this information, but we're also feeling. So we're touching all of our different senses. And I believe we have Seali'i Ma'ali'atoa that wants to say something? Oh, for closing, okay, so he wants to close, and that would be in 6 minutes. So he'll be the one closing the presentation today, but I don't think Iiga Pisa wants to hear from you because the mic is not working. And I didn't turn it off.
That's okay.
I think because you don't need the mic, right?
I don't need the mic.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank the Iiga Pisa's family for being here today as a Samoan. Looking at the legacy of their journey, I can say I am proudly say that I am proud to be a Samoan. What I have learned from this is that because they were taken away because of the freedom that they wanted to express, to keep their traditional culture, to keep their traditional dance, the songs, and believing that nobody should take away their Samoa. Makes me really excited and very proud to say that as a Samoan, the culture that was foretold and was brought from the past should continue on. Now, I wanted to challenge the Caribbean and the Chamorro. Here's the reason why. My children are half Chamorro Samoan. And looking at it today, the Chamorro and the Caribbean culture, which is something I and Gordon Marcia, he's not here. We are fighting this every day of our lives. Him and I always argue because he has a belief, I have a belief, and then we try to put together our belief in making sure our children and their grandchildren grow up in the culture that should be revived. Today, the Chamorro and the Carolinian culture is fading away. We have a the Carolinian Center, but there is nothing in it. And I challenge you, make use of that to practice that culture to come to life today. So, one of the perceptions that I always hear the legislature looking outside to earn the economy. Wrong. Start inside and go outside. Build you inside here. Let your cultures begin, because I say that's my culture too, because my wife is, and my children are also part Chamorro. So therefore, why not let's unite together and bring that culture back? The stronger our culture and our belief, the beauty the Saipan will bring out, the whole Northern Mariana Islands, the attractive we are, the tourists will come, the money will fly in. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time. This was Master, and this Olomwai, and Parami Sarabapo, and what's the one. Thank you.
I didn't quite get your name. So are you a chief or are you a chief?
I am Masila. I am actually Leuta Fuimono from Salani.
He's not Samoan. We were talking about culture and all that. You being a Samoan and her from Chamorro,
yeah,
and it's probably hard for her to learn your culture, and probably you to learn his, for her to learn your culture, and for you to learn by her culture. But you know, you are the best teachers for your children. Well, this is what I know, because I have 9 headaches that were born in New Zealand. 5 girls and 4 boys. And my rule is, no one speaks English at home. You go to school to learn English and everything else. You come home, you speak Samoan. As long as your kids will know your language, they will automatically know the culture. I'm speaking from experience, because that's how I bring up my children. I'm not trying to push it on every Samoan man or woman, but us being away from our country, and you need to let your children know your culture, where you're from, and it's okay, because they will grow up, they'll find out. They'll probably, you'll have good educations, find a job, they will go all the way to Samoa, Rarotonga, anywhere where they're from. But speaking from experience, I know, as long as the kids would know how to speak Samoan, or whatever island they're from, they will automatically know their culture. Speaking for myself and my experience, I'm not trying to push it on anyone, but I'm just trying to answer your question, brother. Manuia.
Pa'apatai, Iiga, Olivia. So it is 8 o'clock. We will end a little earlier than we did last night. And so I will call upon the grandson of Iiga Pisa, Si Ali'i Mali'etoa Samu Ripley, to close.
How about a big hand for Francis, our MC tonight? It's a new town with a surprise. Ia te auleawa mana mi ngā te wai mole atu ai le whaatai, ma le whaamalo I paia ma le mamalo leo fia. Sunga e whawhengainga, whapea, tupu ma te mali I wā fio papa aur nei tū la. Ai taluai ona ua uti uti o tātou taini, o le a whai atu ai sina tala le ngana tū whātasi o le Whaperitania. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Iiga Pisa children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, we wanted to say Papasai Tele and Afadai, and I will learn to thank you in Saipan. I would like to call and thank you to everyone who make tonight their busy schedule to come and hear this important history about the Samoan, some of the chief like Namula Ululawaki and all the great who make this voyage or advocate and fight for the freedom of us. That's why we are here today. And remember them. And also not only a learning lesson for the Samoans, but for all people of color. Because we can united we stand, divided we fall. And with our faith in God, anything is possible. Also, quickly, I wanted to recognize a friend from San Francisco who is a director of the Asian Pacific Islander and advocate for our Samoan health. Is here tonight, Taunu Ve'e, all the way from San Francisco. Can you raise your hand, please? And I would like, in our Samoan tradition, as you can see and witness in the Samoan village, we start everything with God and we conclude with God. So we would like to ask Whaifeau Suma Whawhengainga is Sumai e Whae Utato Mapitanga se Talo a la Malawatria Whautu ngā tangi ma ona tuangane e Sumai e o mai e usu le pese a lo tānu no whāna wai ona whae ule le sunga Whawhengainga Whātai. And we would like for you to please rise while this national Samoan song would be led by Pautu.
Oh
pule whaso soa, mo pule whaso I fua, nei whamoe moe wo iu, male manuia, whaftai tala matongo fia, matu whaonongo ina, tala anga ili, tamaya Iiga Pisa. Whaftai se lui tau moe matou, ina matou I loa, le soi fuanga lo matou wola ai, le rie ni matou, whaia pēa lo finangalo, le wingi le matou, hao mawai nei funga li ele, ia vea matou tangata, le rie matou I loa, ona ola au auna, peo le tala mo le atunu, le ala le pule, o le tautua. We thank you, Lord, for this wonderful occasion. We thank you just for this wonderful evening as we've just heard wonderful stories about the life of Iiga Pisa. What a man, what a great challenge and what a great inspiration for each of us, not only just to live life, but to know to treasure life, not only for ourselves, but for the generation to come, Lord. And we thank you for this evening as we go from this place. I pray for traveling mercies. We pray for blessings. Thank you so much to those that have shared, Lord, the dear family of Iiga Pisa. We pray you'll continue to bless each of them. Thank you also for Scott Russell and his wonderful team, and also for the government of the CNMI and the people of the CNMI, Lord. May we continue, Lord, just to treasure life and know that there's so much more in store for us and even for our children and for generations to come, and just this wonderful occasion that we can gather here and just share stories and hear stories. May, Lord, we just know, Father, that there is purpose for everything, purpose for each and every one of us. So, Lord, we thank you again for this evening, and we love you. We pray these things in the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.